I'm Izzy, and this is Dizzy Quilts and Sews. In today's video, we are going to tackle block number 4 of our Quilt As You Go Quilt Along. All right, so here's the block we're going to be making. I think there's going to be some noises in the background. Hopefully it's not too distracting. I always seem to want to film when there's laundry happening in this house, but anyways. So this is called the Friendship Star. It's a very basic design. I did that on purpose because we're going to get a little more, I don't want to say difficult, but we're changing things up a little bit with the quilting. So I wanted to keep the piecing very, very simple. So you're going to need 2 different fabrics for this, your background and your colors. And once again, we're going to do half square triangles. We're going to do 4 of those. And then the rest of your squares are just plain squares. I'm going to put, once again, all of the cutting instructions in the description box of this video, so you can refer to that. But basically what you're going to need are 2 5-inch squares, 1 in your background fabric and 1 in your colored fabrics, and that's going to make our 4 half square triangles. You're going to need 4 4.5 background squares and 1 4.5 colored squares. You're also going to need, obviously, your 14-inch square piece of batting and a 14-inch square of your backing fabric. So go ahead and get all of your fabrics cut. Oh, by the way, here's what I'm using. So I'm using the gray for my background, and I'm using this beautiful blue, there we go, for the star itself. So let's get cutting, and then I'll come back here and we'll get piecing. All right, here you go. I've got my fabrics, my background, and my colors. Now we're going to take our 4.5-inch squares, the 4 background colors and the 1 colored, and we're going to set those aside for now because we're going to focus on creating half square triangles. So just like we've done so many times now, our colors with the right side up, put our background fabric on top of it so they are right sides together. We're going to take some kind of marking instrument. I'm just using a plain old pen because you're never going to see these marks. And you are going to mark from one corner to the next like this. And this is our marked line, not our stitching line. Because remember, we're going to stitch 1/4 inch to the right and to the left of this line. If you don't have a 1/4 inch foot on your sewing machines, you can definitely go ahead and use your pen to mark your stitching lines. But if you have a 1/4 inch foot like I do, no need to do that. So here's one done. And there we go. And put my line right down the middle from corner to corner. Now I'm going to take these to the sewing machine and stitch on either side of this line, and I'll come right back. All right, there we go. Now don't do like I do and use really contrasting thread. This is the color thread I had on my machine and I just went with it. But yeah, try to use something that'll blend in, like a light gray would have been much better for me. Now what we're going to do for both of these pieces is use a ruler and your rotary cutter and slice right down the middle. So basically on your marked line. There we go. And now I'm going to go to my pressing table and press these open. And you'll remember from our last few blocks, I like to press the seam allowance towards the darker fabric. So if you're looking at it on the back, my seam allowance is always going to go towards my darker fabric. So I'm going to go ahead and open up these 4 pieces, and then we can already start assembling our block. All right, so here are my 4 half square triangles. Now before we can assemble these, forgot one very important step. You need to trim these to 4.5 inches. So just like we've done, we're going to use our little square ruler where I've got a 45-degree angle marked right here. So I'm going to place my 45-degree line on my ruler right on top of my seam, making sure that the 4.5-inch area on my ruler is still inside my little block. And then I'm going to trim to the right and at the top. There we go. And then turn it and then trim the remaining 2 sides. There we go. So I'm just going to do that for all 4. And it's super important, and I think I've mentioned it a few times now, but it really is important that your 45-degree line is exactly on top of the seam, because that will ensure that when you start assembling your block, you've got nice crisp points and corners, and everything lines up beautifully. So although trimming these half square triangles is definitely not my idea of a good time, it is very important. Always be careful when you're using a rotary cutter. Make sure you close the blade when you put it down. Make sure you keep your fingers away from your cutting line, obviously. And try to keep your rotary blades as sharp as can be. I can feel mine's getting a little dull. And when they start to get dull, that's when you put a lot of pressure on your rotary cutter, and that's when accidents happen. Oh. There we go. All right, so I'm going to take these little trimmings and put them to the side. And now we can start assembling our block. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put 2 of my background squares at the very top, and then 2 background squares at the very bottom, and then my plain square or colored square in the middle, like this. And then I can start arranging my half square triangles so they form a star, like this. And then this one here, and then this one like this. And we've got our pretty friendship star. So just like we've been doing since the very beginning of this quilt along, we're going to assemble our rows by stitching our 3 little squares together, and then stitch our rows together once that's done, making sure that our intersections here match up by putting a pin in there before we sew it together. So I'm going to assemble my block, and then I'll come right back and show you how we are going to quilt this little block. And there we go, our beautiful, beautiful friendship star all done. So now we're going to create a quilt sandwich the same way we've been doing it all along. So I've got my backing fabric, my batting, and I'm going to place my block pretty much in the middle of all of this, making sure that I've got a little bit of backing fabric all around. There we go, like this. And I'm not gonna bother basting this. You can if you want to. Putting a couple of pins here and there just to make sure your quilt sandwich stays together throughout the whole quilting. But this is now ready to quilt. But before we go to the machine, let's talk free motion quilting, shall we? All right, so we're gonna do some free motion quilting on this block. This is gonna be the first block we do that way. And we're gonna do a very, very simple, no stress design. We're gonna basically do a meandering stitch, basically. So it's like a wiggle that goes everywhere, but doesn't overlap ever or doesn't cross over existing stitching ever. So it's gonna be really easy because you're gonna start in one corner of your block and finish in the opposite corner. Now you do need a couple of things, and I'm going to show you those as soon as we get to the machine. So you need a machine where you can lower your feed dogs, and you need a free motion quilting foot on your machine. I'm going to show that to you in just a second. Before you do any new design or any design that you haven't done in a while as far as free motion quilting goes, I suggest practicing the design on paper with a pen before you go to your machine. And that's what we're going to do right here. I always have some scrap paper. This is the pages of a pattern, a PDF pattern that I didn't use. So the way we're going to do the meandering is we're going to start in one corner, probably in the batting, so you don't have to worry about burying threads. And we are just going to go like this and meander all over your block, never crossing over a stitching line, and just go like this until you get to the opposite corner, and then we're going to finish off the block and into the batting again. So super easy, no stress, don't overthink it. You're not going for perfection. You're just doing a squiggly line all over your block. So grab some paper, grab a pen or a pencil, and have some fun doodling just to kind of know how you're going to do this, going from corner to corner without getting yourself stitched into a corner. So that's what you're trying to avoid. By practicing, you'll know exactly where your stitching line needs to go to get you from this corner here to this corner here. All right, so get that done, and I'll meet you at the machine where we're actually going to stitch on our block. All right, well, hopefully this angle makes sense and you can see. I'm hoping it's not too dark. Let's see, can I? Okay, oh well, hopefully this works. Okay, so here is the free motion quilting foot for my machine. Yours may not look like this, and that's not important. The thing that matters is that you have at the bottom a circle that looks kind of like this. There we go. And your needle is just going to stitch right in the middle of this circle. So yeah, it doesn't really matter what your foot looks like, but basically you need to put it on your machine. I'm going to put it on mine. And then the two things you need to do after you've put on, and I'm really sorry if there's noise in the background, hopefully you can still hear me okay. We are going to put our feed dogs down. So the feed dogs in the bed of your machine, we don't want them to grab your fabric. You want your hands to be moving your blocks or your fabric at all times. So we're going to lower the feed dogs. And then you're going to put your stitch length at a 0. For your first try at this, don't play with your tension too much. Don't play with anything else. We're just going to go for it with the feet down, feet dogs down, and your stitch length at 0. All right, I changed the angle a little bit, hoping that you're gonna see this a little bit better. Now remember, our goal is this here. All right, so I'm gonna start in one corner over here. What you wanna do is you put your needle down in the batting and then turn your hand wheel. You basically wanna pop the bobbin thread to the top, and then when you get the loop, just pull on it so that both of your threads are sitting on top. There we go. All right, that avoids having a nice little thread nest under your block. Now I'm gonna put my foot down. Now the trick with free motion quilting is to go fast. I mean, stitch fast, but move your hands at the same rate as your machine is stitching. And you're not gonna get this right the first time around, you just won't. So that comes with practice. It comes with just understanding the speed at which your machine sews. So basically your hands need to move smoothly in pace or in rhythm with your machine. And that may sound very, very strange, but once you start going, you'll see exactly what I mean. And if you don't move your hands too quickly or in bursts, like if you move it, I don't even know what the word is, but your hand movements need to be smooth, basically. So I'm gonna set the speed at my machine at like medium so I don't go too quickly. So I'm gonna hold on to the threads here, stitch in place a couple of times in the batting to kind of lock this down, and then forget about my threads here. I'm gonna put my hands on my quilt sandwich and then start stitching. All right, so let me get my threads out of the way here. Beautiful. Now, the slower you go, the harder this is gonna be. So sometimes it's just worth it to close your eyes and just go fast. If you have a machine or a speed regulator on your machine and you can set it to like half speed, just then step on the pedal and just go. Let's remember to move your hands at about the same pace. The goal here is to get consistent stitches and just move your hands around like you're doodling. And when you need to reposition your hands, just stop with your machine, with your needle down, reposition your hands, straighten out your shoulders. We do tend to get very stressed out when we're free motion quilting. I know my shoulders get really tense. So stop, needle down, reposition your hands, relax your shoulders, and then continue. And again, go as quickly as you're comfortable, moving your hands very smoothly though. Try to go as close to the edge as you can without going off the edge into the batting. Although if you do, it's not a big deal. All right, see, now I've done all of this part over here. I'm just gonna reposition my hands and my quilt sandwich and keep going. Now, one thing you might want to do if you're a little nervous about stitching onto your block right away, make a couple of practice sandwiches. So take some scrap fabrics, some scrap batting, and just make a few of these sandwiches. Don't make them too big because then you're going to be more worried about wrangling the bigger quilt. Just make them small and practice. What you're looking for is consistent, even stitches, or as close to even as possible. And then on the back, you want to make sure that you don't get any skip stitches or any puckering or any pulling that would, point to tension issues. You can play around with your tension if you notice that either the stitches are, pulling to the front or pulling to the back. But my machine, to be honest, just on default setting, is behaving very, very nicely. If on the back you notice what we call lashes, so basically it's like your stitching is pulling or your stitches are pulling and you're getting almost like eyelashes on the back, that is usually not a tension issue. This is an issue with your hands going too quickly or not smoothly enough. So if some sudden movements left, right, or up and down will create these lashes. So try to keep the speed of your hands and the speed of your machine as aligned as possible. No sudden movements in any direction. And if you need to reposition your hands, just stop with the needle down, reposition your hands, and then keep going. Again, be gentle with yourself. I've been doing this for 12 years, and my free motion quilting at first was terrible. So it does take time, it does take practice. Just keep playing with your practice sandwiches, and you're gonna be just fine. All right, I'm nearing the end now. So I'm just gonna work my way around this corner and then stitch right off and into the batting and in place for a few stitches and cut my thread. And there you go. My nice block with all of my meandering stitches, and this is the front. And on the back, it's looking pretty good. I don't know if you're going to be able to see it. Maybe not, because I've got a really busy print and my thread blends in very nicely. But if you look on the gray, on the black areas, you might be able to see my stitching there. And although not perfect, because nothing ever can be, they're pretty even, consistent stitches. They're not too short and they're not too long. You don't want super short stitches, but you also don't want stitches so long that people can get things like their fingers or toes stuck into the thread. So there you have it. Now you can, depending on how far from the edges you quilted, you can do a stay stitch around the perimeter of your square. I'm not going to do that because I got pretty close to the edge. No need to trim this again. So yeah, this block can now sit until we're ready to work on our next one. And there you go. One friendship star, all quilted with a meandering stitch, or what some people refer to as stippling. There you go. And then on the back, hopefully you can see the stitches. Super simple block in terms of piecing, but if this is your first time doing free motion quilting, definitely be patient and be kind with yourself. Take some breaks and just practice, practice, practice. The most difficult part of free motion quilting is not the actual design. It's mastering the speed of your hands, making sure that you're keeping up with the machine itself or that you're not going faster than your machine. Once you strike that balance between your hand movements and the speed of stitching on your machine, then you are golden and you can pretty much do any free motion quilting design. So hopefully you enjoyed that. If you have any questions at all, please be sure to put them down in the comments below or send them to me via email. My email address is always down in the description box. Once you finish your block, please go ahead and post them to Instagram and tag me at Dizzy Quilts Blog. I love to see your blocks when you finish them. You're all amazing. So definitely tag me, or if you're not on Instagram, send me a picture of your block via email. Thank you so much for participating in this quilt along. I can't tell you how much I appreciate each and every one playing along with me or making this amazing quilt. Thanks for watching. If you like the video, please give it a like on your way out and consider subscribing to the channel so you don't miss another one of these videos. Thanks again, and I will see you soon.